Good morning. Welcome to Get Ready With Me and Talk About Stuff. I am your host, Stephanie McCown, and this show is the show where I get ready and talk about whatever is on my mind with you. Today, we are going to be talking about something that has been on my mind for a few days, and we'll get to that in just a moment. But first, how are you doing? Did you have a good weekend? Is your week off to a good start? I usually record on Mondays, but Monday was not my friend this week, so Tuesday it is. I hope that your week is going well so far and that you're having a great day so far, and maybe this video can make it a little bit better. I don't know. We'll see. So today I am going to be talking about Sharon Tate. Now, Sharon Tate came into my brain a few days ago, and I didn't know why. I had no idea why, but I just, for whatever reason, she was just on my mind a lot. And I took a deep dive into, I love paranormal stuff. And I thought, well, I'm going to go see if anybody has done like any spirit box sessions with her and so forth. And I took a deep dive into that. And I also posted on Twitter that for whatever reason, Sharon Tate was on my mind. And a few other people said that she had been on their minds too, at the same time for some reason. So I thought, you know what, I don't know why I'm thinking of her, but I think what I'm going to do with this is I'm going to make a video about Sharon Tate as more than a murder victim. And the reason I feel that this is important is because if you ever look her up, you'll see that it can be very difficult to find information about her outside of the most horrific thing that ever happened to her. And I don't think that's right. I think that she deserves to be remembered as more than what happened to her, that led to her death. So that's what we're going to be discussing today. So without any further ado, I'm just going to get right into it. So Sharon Tate was born on June 24th, 1943 in Dallas, Texas, to Colonel Paul Tate and his wife, Doris. Sharon, from the time she was a baby, her beauty was obvious. She was entered into beauty contests, or beauty pageants, sorry, from the time she was little, and she won her first title at 6 months old when she became Miss Tiny Tot of Dallas. Sharon would continue to do beauty pageants as she grew older, and she, at 16, earned the title of Miss Richland, but she would end up having to surrender that crown because her father's military career was going to take them all to Italy. Sharon did attend high school in Italy for 1 year, but she spent a lot of her high school years in Texas, as far as I can tell. She was from what I can tell, she was an exemplary student. She was involved in the student council, she played basketball, she was a cheerleader. She was just, the quintessential all-American girl, I guess you could say. And she was absolutely gorgeous. And the thing with Sharon Tate, though, was even though she was so beautiful and she was receiving all of these accolades about her beauty, she said that she never really saw it in herself. She never really felt, she didn't understand the appeal of her appearance. It was completely mind-boggling to her that people would look at her and see this stunning beauty. But, everybody who knew her said that she was not only beautiful on the outside, she was just a very beautiful person, period. And that came through in her appearance. Sharon she came off as being very, almost stuck up and snobbish at first because she was incredibly quiet. And I think that happens a lot when people see an attractive person and they're shy. People make the assumption that the reason the person isn't interacting with others is because they feel they're too good for other people, or you know, you're just not good enough to warrant their attention, when really they're just shy. They're just feeling insecure. And that was what happened with Sharon. Now, when they moved to Italy, Sharon and a couple of her high school friends became aware of a movie that was being shot nearby. And they decided, you know, the movie was looking for extras. And they were like, heck yeah, let's do that. And I'm going to be consulting my notes a lot today because despite the dearth of articles, Sharon actually had a very busy 26 years on this planet. So she, regarding her quote, sexiness, she says later in life, sexiness is all in the eye of the beholder. I think it should be, absolutely. My sex appeal, whatever it is, or whatever it might be, isn't obvious, to me at least. So, in high school, though, she did work as an extra on a film called Hemingway's Adventures of a Young Man. And she developed a relationship with the actor Richard Beymer, who encouraged her to pursue an acting career. And he really was instrumental in helping her feel at least confident enough to step out of her comfort zone and pursue this. Because had it not been for that vote of confidence, with as shy as she was, who knows, she might not have ever done that. But, you know, it makes such a difference if you have someone in your life who can see what you can't see just yet and can encourage you to pursue your gifts, even if you don't see them quite yet. And Sharon did exactly that. She decided that she wanted to pursue a career in acting. When she was old enough, she came back to the States, went to LA, started trying to make her mark. Unfortunately, her mother really struggled with having Sharon over there because she was still in Italy. And it was to such a degree that her mother ended up having like a nervous breakdown, and Sharon felt bad about that. She didn't want her mother worrying about her so much that, you know, she was having a nervous breakdown. So she ended up going back to Italy and joining the family until the whole family moved back stateside. So when they did come back, though, Sharon really worked hard to establish herself in Hollywood. Now, she was still struggling with her confidence when she signed on with her agent. And her agent, for better or for worse, and there's a lot of criticism, you know, about her agent and the way he handled some things in her career. But, you know, he just felt that there were a lot of things she wasn't ready for. So, but what he did do for her, and who, I'm going to find her agent's name, Martin Ransoff? Anyway, so what he did help her do, though, was he helped her get a lot of smaller roles. Even though she really wanted to try something big, he just did not believe she was ready for it yet, wouldn't be able to handle it. So she got smaller roles on sitcoms like Mr. Ed. She did have a recurring role on the Beverly Hillbillies, and she was actually up for a lead role on Petticoat Junction, but her agent didn't believe that she was ready for something that big and that she wouldn't be able to handle it. And according to what Sharon herself has said, she trusted his judgment on that. She said, Mr. Ransoff did not want the audience to see me till I was ready. So, and this went on until 1965, when she was finally given a lead role in the movie Eye of the Devil, starring with lead actor David Niven. Now, she took her role very seriously. And I think that when you have somebody like Sharon Tate, who's very beautiful, who could easily get by just on her looks had she wanted to, you know, I think people have this expectation that because of their appearance, they're not going to be a serious actor. And there have been actors who have said even today that they just don't get taken seriously as an actor because of their appearance. And that's an unfortunate stereotype, but there it is. I mean, it's there, you know. So, but with Sharon Tate, she took her role in the movie very seriously. She traveled to London to meet with a Wiccan high priest and priestess to learn more about their practices and their beliefs, and she applied those things to her role in the movie. Now, the movie itself didn't garner a lot of positive attention from the critics. In fact, you know, a lot of the movies that she was in didn't. And that, I think, though, is a pretty common thing from what I understand, is actors, especially in the beginning of their careers, they have some real... They just have some really bad movies. I guess there's no other way to say it. I mean, if you are early in your career and you've got some great movies going, good for you. Good for you. But I think it's probably more common for people as they're getting established in that you know, in the capacity of an actor, and they're letting people know what their range is, that they're going to do some movies that critics are just going to be like, what? Why would anybody want to be in this movie? And again, it sounds like Sharon, unfortunately, probably because, you know, she was so beautiful, unfortunately was cast in a lot of films that just did not showcase her abilities very well at all. Now, she would go on to star in 5 more films in her lifetime, including, I think, the one most of us probably know best, Valley of the Dolls. Now, Valley of the Dolls was not well received by critics at all, but Roger Ebert said later on that even as bad as the movie was, and he hated that movie, Sharon's performance itself was captivating. Now, it's been a while since I've watched the movie, but I do remember watching it and just being in awe of her because, you know, there's so much that most of us, unless we take the time to really look for it, we just don't know about her because, you know, unfortunately, the more salacious aspects of her very short life are the things that most publications choose to focus on, and they do that because it's clickbait. You know, people want to read the grisly details, and so it's hard to understand, it's hard to get to know her beyond that because there just isn't a lot of information out there unless you look for it. So at the time when I watched Valley of the Dolls, I really knew nothing about her, and I thought, oh my gosh, she is amazing. And it sounds like that is kind of, you know, maybe not a universal feeling, but a common feeling regarding her performance in that film. Now, I did read that the director of the film was very hard on all of the women in the film, all of the leading ladies, and was extremely critical of everything that they did. But Patty Duke said that with Sharon Tate, he was especially hard on her. And I think part of that, again, comes back to the low expectations people had of her because she was blonde, she was beautiful, she had a flawless body. There's this idea that women who look this way don't have any real talent or ability because they've been skating by on their looks their whole lives. So Sharon, when she took a job, she had a lot to prove. She knew she had to go in there and really prove herself because people were assuming the worst of her as soon as she walked onto the set. So she had to work very hard to demonstrate herself as a serious actress. And in many ways she did. She, you know, she proved people wrong about her constantly. Now, moving on, later on she would do a movie with Roman Polanski called The Fearless Vampire Killers. And this was the movie that, you know, he originally did not want to hire her, and he had wanted a redhead, and he finally said, I will hire you, but you have to wear a red wig through filming. And she's like, okay. So he hired her. He was very hard on her as well. It is said that there were some scenes that they shot that he just was not satisfied with the way Sharon was delivering dialogue, and he had her redo it like 70 times. So even though this is the movie, you know, during which they fell in love, that did not mean that he went easy on her whatsoever. He was very hard on her. And, you know, I watched the movie last night. it's an interesting movie. Very subtle humor, and I kind of enjoy that. You really have to think about what's happening to understand why these things are funny. It's a spoof of a horror film. It's a spoof of the whole genre, and as it was at the time. And it's, if that's your thing, if you like those old horror movies, I think that you might enjoy watching that. Because now I will say there were some scenes I did not appreciate, but that probably had more to do with who was in them, more so than the actual scene itself. But I will leave it to you. If you've not watched the film, I don't want to give anything away. But if you choose to watch it, I'm willing to bet you'll know exactly what I mean. Be that as it may, Sharon Tate and Roman Polanski fell in love through the filming of this movie. And by the end of filming, she was actually living in his apartment in London. So these two young lovebirds are building their life together, and then in 1968, January 20th, 1968, they got married. They got married just shy of Sharon's 25th birthday. Yay, happy, happy day. And the pictures are just gorgeous. I mean, she looks so beautiful on her wedding day. She looks so happy. And she just, if you've looked at any pictures of Sharon Tate that aren't posed and so forth, she just had a radiance about her that came through in so many ways. And on her wedding day, it really shone through. And there were people who were not happy with her choice to marry Roman Polanski, and arguably there are good reasons for them to not be happy. He is a very, even back then, he was, he had a reputation back then even for just, he wasn't going to be the faithful husband, is what I'm saying. And I don't know if Sharon Tate married him with any intention to change him. We can never know that. We can't, it's not our place to speculate. But whatever the case may be, Sharon, at least in those pictures, she was happy. She was just thrilled to be marrying this man. And Sharon's style on that day was so iconic. She had the silk ivory mini dress, and her hair is just like a crown of cascading curls, and she's just so beautiful. And her wedding dress, in fact, in 2018, it was auctioned off for $56,000. I'm sure a lot of that, most of it probably, is because it was Sharon Tate's, but it's also just so emblematic of that era in fashion. I mean, Sharon Tate was in so many ways the definition of 1960s fashion. So Sharon and Roman, they get married, and they start their life together. In 1969, they move into the house at CeeLo Drive. Sharon is, very pregnant, and you can, if you look at pictures of her during her pregnancy, you can see she is so excited about this, the prospect of motherhood. I mean, she is just, again, she's just radiant. And I know I keep using that term, radiant, but she just radiated, such a happiness. And it was really clear when you look at pictures of her, as she, when she was pregnant. I mean, she was really loving the idea of, doing the more, having a baby, possibly living a more domestic life. Now, I need to back up just a little bit. There's one thing about Sharon Tate that really struck me. I watched a video of her and Roman Polanski on Playboy After Dark, and it was such a great interview. And, again, coming back to when you look at someone, an actress who looks like Sharon Tate, it's very easy to assume that their entire career is just, their appearance, their pretty face, their perfect bodies. They have nothing else to offer. When I watched this interview, I was really struck by how intelligent she was. She spoke with such conviction on the subject of nudity. And it was a fairly short interview. It was about, I think the whole interview lasts like 8 minutes. But, you know, she made the point that nudity in itself isn't bad. She was a staunch advocate, in fact, for nudity. And she said that nudity in film is only bad when it's contrived. She said if nudity is part of the scene, you know, if it's a scene in which in your real life you would be nude anyway, then it's okay. If it's a contrived scene just to get you nude, that's different. Let me read her quote. Let's see. She said in a different interview, she did not see any difference between being stark naked or fully dressed if it's part of the job. So, remembering that earlier in her life, she was an extremely shy person, that was beginning to fade away as her career grew, her confidence grew, and she, from what I can gather, it looked like she was finally beginning to see what other people were seeing. Not that she had this flawless body. She was so much more than that. What she began to see was that, you know, at least from what I can gather in reading quotes of hers and so forth, is that she had the ability to captivate an audience, whether it was with her acting, with her appearance, with both. And she did end up doing a photo shoot with Playboy to promote the Fearless Vampire Killers. And it's a beautiful, beautiful photo shoot. I mean, the pictures they did they're works of art. You know, there's nothing lewd about them. There's nothing exploitative about them. They're very tastefully done. And she looks beautiful. And I thought that was really awesome because it had only been really just a few years prior where she was so shy and unsure of herself. I don't know that she would have been confident enough to share herself with the whole world that way. And people have a lot of different opinions about nudity. But here's the thing, we spend a lot of our time in life nude. We do. And I think that if you are someone who feels comfortable sharing yourself in that way, and you don't feel objectified, and you don't feel like you're being taken advantage of, then really what anybody else thinks of it doesn't matter all that much. All that matters is how the person who is doing said nudity feels about the nudity. And Sharon was quite comfortable with it. Now, Sharon, as I said, Sharon and Roman moved into the house on CeeLo Drive. Sharon loved this house. So we're in 1969 now. I went back to 1967 and now we're in 1969. Sharon loved this house. She loved it so much, she called it her, I believe it was her house of love, her love house. Let me consult my notes because, as I mentioned, there's a lot. There is a lot. Yes, she called it her love house. And this is where she spent, you know, the most, I guess, grueling months of pregnancy. I mean, anybody who's ever been pregnant knows that like the second trimester on, things get really tough. And this was where she lived. And she, you know, if you look at pictures of her as she's, you know, when she was pregnant, she was just, it really looked like she had hit her stride. You know, she was living in a house she loved with a man she loved. She was having a baby. You know, it just really looked like things were, you know, all the years of work and disappointment and, you know, having to prove herself again and again to people who constantly doubted her. It just looked like it was all finally paying off. And she was so happy. Now, of course, we all know her life was tragically cut short on, was it August 4th? I'm sorry, you guys. August 4th, I believe, 1969, when she and her friends that were at the house that night were brutally killed by people whose names I won't mention because they do not merit mentioning. We all know that story. Now, Sharon Tate, however, you know, even though to many people, all she is known for is what happened to her during her last night on this side of the veil. Sorry. You know, she lived a very full life in her 26 years. She pursued her dreams. She became a confident woman. She really demonstrated that if you want to, you can move past, you know, you can get past the way people think of you, and you can prove them wrong. I mean, I think it's easy to look at somebody who looks like Sharon Tate and assume that because of their looks, they must have life really easy. Well, that might be true in some degree, but I think in some respects, looking the way she did, and I wouldn't know this problem because I definitely don't have it, but looking the way she did, people had certain expectations of her because she was flawlessly beautiful. I mean, she just was. And I think that came with its own set of burdens. And Sharon demonstrated that with hard work and perseverance, it is possible to move beyond those negative perceptions people have of you. And she did that. I think that had she lived, she would have done great things in cinema. She wanted to be a comedic actress. Looking at some of the work she's done, she very easily could have pursued that. I mean, she, you know, for better or for worse, she did not have any illusions about what kind of roles she was going to get in Hollywood. She knew she wasn't going to be given serious roles. So she wanted to be an actress who could capture humor, but do it in such a subtle and sophisticated way that it was, you know, like it was intelligent humor that she wanted to do. And she did. She did it. If you watch The Fearless Vampire Killers, you can see that she had the ability to do that, and she did it very well. Now, Sharon Tate left quite a legacy that goes well beyond just being known as a murder victim. She is still, to this day, a fashion icon. She has inspired runway looks for designers. She is the inspiration for, or she was the inspiration rather, for Drew Barrymore's 2010 shoot with Harper's Bazaar. And the way they captured the influence of Sharon Tate in Drew Barrymore's pictures is just astounding. I mean, Sharon Tate came through loud and clear in those pictures. She is also, you know, she has been considered an icon of 1960s fashion, and she was, you know, she's also considered someone who revolutionized, not really well, I guess revolutionized fashion and really made 60s fashion what it was. She embodied that free spirit, hippie, carefree way of being that was so prevalent in the 1960s, and it showed in her, in the whole way she presented herself. Sharon, you know, she was a Hollywood actress, but she is one that really did not embrace all the glam of Hollywood. She preferred very subtle makeup a lot of the time. Now, she also did smoky eye and things like that, but she did not do the heavy makeup that like others of the 1960s, like say Twiggy, for example, were doing. She didn't do that. She kept her makeup looking very natural. Many times she went without any makeup at all, and she looked just as beautiful. She also, you know, she was just, she really embraced the idea of natural beauty with just hints of glam. Not a lot of glam, just hints of it. And she did it so, so beautifully. Now, there's a book. I really hate that I have to look at my notes so much, but here we are. So 2017, David Willis wrote a book called Switched On: Women Who Revolutionized Style in the 1960s. And designer Trina Turk said this about Sharon Tate. Sharon Tate has transcended her career in the 60s to become one of the great fashion and style icons of the 20th century and beyond. To this day, she still inspires makeup looks and fashion designs, and she has also inspired a lot of pop culture entertainment. I just, last night, on the recommendation of a friend, I watched the movie Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, and I probably should have known about this movie, but I have to be honest, when I see any movie that is going to be representing Sharon Tate, or really anybody, but especially somebody who died the way she did, I've become very leery of it, because so often it becomes exploitative. You know, they exploit the worst parts of that person's life, and they do it because they know there are people out there who just cannot get enough of, you know, her murderers and so forth, and speculations about what happened. And so I probably wouldn't have chosen to watch the movie on my own, just because that's, you know, when I hear oh, there's a character that playing, or there's someone playing Sharon Tate, I'm just like, oh, okay, I'm not interested. But as I was doing research for this video, first of all, her sister Deborah said, let me get it correct. She said, now keep in mind, Sharon Tate has been portrayed multiple times in multiple films, and her family, I would imagine, I think her sister Deborah is the only immediate family still living, have probably had it with people trying to portray her in any way that's even close to accurate, and you know, it portrays her without trying to sensationalize her. I mean, that probably almost never happens. But when she watched Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, she said, of Margot Robbie, she made me cry because she sounded just like Sharon. The tone in her voice was completely Sharon, and it just touched me so much that big tears started falling. I actually got to see my sister again 50 years later. And after I read that, and after the recommendation from my friend, I was like, oh, I have to watch this. And I really loved the movie. It was so good. And it kind of, you know, it was a little bit sad, because you're left thinking of what might have been. But, you know, we don't always get the endings we want in life. We don't always get, you know, things don't always have a happy ending. And Sharon Tate's life did end tragically, but her legacy is such that, you know, she has left a mark on generations. People who knew her, you know, people who only know her as Sharon Tate, the actress. There's a lot of commentary about her beauty and just how flawless she was, and how she was growing in her career as an actress when her life was tragically cut short, and people wonder what she might have done. All of that is valid. And people who knew her personally said that, or still say, that she radiated beauty from the inside, and she was kind and gentle and intelligent, and if she thought you were charming and someone that she wanted to spend time with and get to know better, she didn't care what your station was in life. She looked at people as people. And I think that when you think about someone whose life has been tragically cut short, whether it's due to illness or, you know, a tragedy like what happened to Sharon Tate, or whatever the case might be, one of the upsides of the downside, I guess, is they get to forever be that person. They get to forever be remembered as their very best and brightest self. And I think that's definitely true with Sharon Tate. She gets to be forever beautiful. She gets to be forever remembered as this effervescent, you know, just light being that she was. By all accounts, she was somebody who just carried light with her everywhere she went. And when she walked into a room, it was like you know, from what I read, it's like the whole atmosphere changed, and she brought light with her. And she gets to be that forever. And, you know, we can speculate about what she might have done had she lived, and I do think she would have done great things. She probably would have made a great mother. You know, she inspired so many things. Oh, another thing she inspired, I almost forgot to mention. She did a photo shoot, and part of the shoot was herself in a white t-shirt that had a red star on it. And in the show Mad Men, Megan Draper, there's a scene where she wears a white t-shirt with a red star, and the costume designer, and I want to give credit, so I'm going to look at her name. Hang on. I just licked my finger. That's gross. I shouldn't have done that. Janie Bryant. I think that's her name. I can't really read my writing. But she said, yes, indeed, Sharon Tate did inspire that costume, or that outfit. There is also speculation that Megan Draper's life was made to mirror Sharon Tate's in some ways. You know, not the least of which being, you know, Don Draper is a serial womanizer. And, you know, there's a lot of well, not speculation. I mean, Sharon Tate herself said that Roman Polanski was not faithful to her. And she knew that. She said to her friends that they have a wonderful system in which Roman lies to her and she pretends to believe him. So, would she have stayed with him? I don't know. I know that she deserved better than what she got. But you know what? I also know that a lot of young women, myself included, marry men that later on, as they mature and have renewed perspective on life, they look back at that man and wonder what in the world they were thinking. And I don't think that's any different with Sharon Tate. I imagine that eventually she would have realized that there were better people out there for her, not the least of whom was Jay Sebring, who she was engaged to at one point, and who, after they broke up, they did rekindle a friendship, and he really stuck close to her. I think, you know, the speculation is he was there because he knew that at some point that marriage was going to fall apart, and he wanted to be there to swoop her into his arms and give her the love she deserved. Unfortunately, his life too was tragically cut short that night. So, but we'll never know. We'll never know what Sharon Tate might have been able to do had she lived. But what we do know is that she left a legacy. I think that her legacy is one of beauty, of course, but also perseverance and the unwavering persistence in pursuing the dream that you have for the life that you want. It would have been really easy for her to just, you know, settle for roles in which she was just playing the oversexed, beautiful woman who really had nothing of value to contribute other than being there to look gorgeous. But she didn't want to do that, and she continued to pursue other things. And I think that, unfortunately, just as she was moving into the direction of where she really wanted to go, her life was cut short. So we'll never know. But what she did leave behind is a legacy that, you know, she's been gone for over 50 years now, and we're still talking about her, still watching her movies, where, you know, people are still inspired by her, and she is still someone who creates such wonder, because there is that question, what might she have done? What might her life have been? And we'll never know, but people have a lot of fun speculating about what Sharon Tate would have become had she lived. I'm going to finish this up. I don't have a lot to do, but I'm going to finish this up and be right back with some final thoughts and to tell you why I felt like it was important to discuss this today. So hang on, I'll be right back. All right, I'm back. Okay. Anyway, so that was Sharon Tate. I lost my train of thought for a second there. Why did I want to talk about this today? Well, there are a couple reasons. The first thing that came to mind when I started looking for, you know, first when I took a dive down the paranormal rabbit hole around Sharon Tate. It really struck me that not just with Sharon Tate, but with a lot of people who died under really tragic or violent circumstances, the questions that are posed to them by investigators are often traumatizing, I would guess. My thoughts are this. If you believe that there is, that when we die, we continue to live on in some form of energy somewhere, and we are, if we choose to, we can communicate with people who are still living here. It seems to me that it also is reasonable to assume that the people we're talking to, the non-living people we're talking to through our spirit boxes or question and answers, looking for EVPs, whatever, probably have some feelings about the questions that we are asking them and the stories we want them to tell. And when I thought of Sharon Tate, I thought, this woman has probably endured over 50 years of people asking her to relive the most horrific moments of her life. Asking her things like, do you remember being murdered? What did they say to you? Things like that. And I think, and I don't think every paranormal investigator does that. I think enough do with her and with other people that, I think there needs to be some evaluation of what are the proper ethics here regarding how we choose to communicate with people who are on the other side. Because I cannot imagine being asked to rehash again and again and again and again the moments when you were begging for your life and when your life was finally taken from you. I cannot imagine that is in any way a pleasant feeling. And especially, people who do that sort of thing just for clicks, just to get people to watch their show or to watch, what they post on their YouTube channel. If we believe that these entities we're speaking to are in fact people, it would stand to reason that we need to show some respect for those people and respect for their experiences and not constantly ask them to relive the worst moments of their life. And I wonder, it made me think, what kind of trauma has she endured even after death? Because people won't leave her alone about this, this one day in her life. People won't leave her alone about it. So that was the first thing that came to mind, is just having more awareness of the fact that, if you believe this way, when you communicate with these non-living people, they are people. And they're going to have some kind of, feelings about what you're asking of them. And I think a lot of times, spirits that are interpreted as negative or angry, I wonder how often that's related to constantly being asked about the most horrific things they ever experienced. I mean, I would imagine that would get very old very fast, and I would probably be angry too if the only thing people cared about was the most horrible thing that ever happened to me. Which brings me to my next point, and I think for a lot of us, even the more important point. Sharon Tate is more than the worst thing that ever happened to her, and so are you. It's very easy to get caught up in a place where we can only think of ourselves in terms of the worst things that ever happened to us, the worst decisions we ever made, the worst things we've ever done. But we are so much more than that. And maybe you're a survivor of trauma. Maybe things were done to you that traumatized you to such a degree that it changed you completely. And it's been difficult for you to move beyond that. It's been difficult for you to see yourself as more than that, as more than a victim. And I want to encourage you today to do your best to remember that you are more than the worst things that ever happened to you. You are more than the choice someone else made to victimize you. And as I was researching Sharon Tate and saw that there was just so much more to her than this horrible story people like to tell. I realized, that's true for so many of us. There might be terrible, terrible things that happened in our lives, and these are the stories we tell. But there are also a lot of wonderful aspects of who we are and what our experience has been. Even if the most wonderful thing you can say about yourself is, I survived, I'm still here. That in itself is something to give yourself credit for, because it takes a lot of strength and a lot of courage to be able to stay the course and stay in the game when things get really, really difficult. So if you're still here to tell your story, that in itself is something to be proud of. Now, I do want to say that sometimes, for various reasons, people do choose to leave early. I guess we'll put it that way. I don't shame that choice, because people who make that choice are living with burdens that you and I might not understand, or we do understand all too well, and we can understand why they made that decision. So if you've ever been in that place too, where you've been thinking about that, know that you're more than that moment as well. You are more than the things that happen to you. You are more than your darkest days. You are more than a victim of circumstances and I guess a prisoner in your own mind. Sometimes I've dealt with depression most of my life, and sometimes I feel like I'm a prisoner in my own mind because I cannot seem to get away from it sometimes. But we're more than that. And, looking at someone like Sharon Tate, whose story has been whittled down to just these last few hours of her life, and then realizing she's so much more than that, that is encouragement to me that I'm passing on to you, that we're more than that. We're more than the worst things that ever happened to us. And I hope as you hear this that it can encourage you today. I know that things have been really hard. We've been going through a lot in the last year. And I know that people are at a point where they feel like they're breaking. And, they feel like nothing, it's getting hard to see the other side of this, of the pandemic, of, economic struggles that we're facing, everything that's come with the events of the past year. It's getting hard to see that there's, we will come out the other side of this, and eventually things will stabilize. I know that's hard, but we are more than this past year. We're more than this long and trying season. We're more than that. And I hope that you'll hang on. I hope my words today can be something that can, they can encourage you somehow and can give you the strength to go forward, even if it's just 5 minutes at a time. There are days when that's what I have to do. I have to take life 5 minutes at a time, because looking at getting through an entire day is just too much. So I tell myself, I only have to get through the next 5 minutes. And once I get through those 5 minutes, I'll do 5 more minutes. And I just keep doing that until I know I'm going to be okay today. I'm going to get through this. I'm going to be all right. Even if all right means just surviving. Sometimes surviving is in itself a small miracle. And I hope you'll give yourself credit that you're still here. You're still here. And I know that because you're watching the video. And I'm glad you're here. I'm glad that you chose to stick around. And I hope you'll stick around a lot longer. And I hope that you do hear me. I hope you do hear me when I say to you that you are more than the worst thing that ever happened to you. All right, take care of yourself. Be good to yourself. Be good to each other. Don't shit on yourself or anyone else. And be safe out there. Follow all the safety precautions so we can get through this and see the other side of this. And I will talk to you again very soon. Bye.